Welcome to Making Conversations, a podcast from makers Gemma Millen and Robin Galway.
For today's episode, we are speaking with potter Babs Belshaw. Hello and welcome to episode 5 of our second series. We are halfway through this series that has been kindly supported by the Arts Council of Northern Ireland thanks to their Artist Emergency Programme. And today in this episode we are making conversations with Babs Belshaw. Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I met you when we done our maker meetup in February, which I'm really grateful that happened because everything went just a bit mental afterwards.
Really one of the last sort of out things I did, and then COVID happened and I was like, oh, we won't have those things for a long time, and it's very sad.
Yeah, I know.
Really good. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, good. It was really lovely to finally get to meet you, to put like a face to the Instagram profile or whatever.
Thanks.
Yeah. But it's nice to see you again. So you are a potter. You do production pottery and you have your own studio as well. That's what you're working out of at the moment.
So it's probably 3 or 4 years ago, I was doing this part-time as well as working for another potter in Dublin, Caro Art. And then so I was down in Dublin for 3 days and then I was up in Coleraine for 4 days. And I sort of lived my life like that for probably 3 years. And then my husband and I decided 2020 was going to be the year. We're going full time. We're moving up here. We're leaving Dublin, and then Corona happened. But anyway, we're grand, sure.
Oh, wow,
we're making, we have space. We can, it's strangely been quite enjoyable because we've really slowed down after living such a busy life for so long.
Brilliant.
So yeah,
Great.
So just in our garage at the moment is where I am making everything, but we are renovating some outbuildings that were stables and like a barn to be a pottery with a big glass wall in the middle, and then the other half will be a cafe. So
Yeah, amazing.
That sounds like the dream. I think everybody will agree, definitely. So how did you get involved in ceramics? Coming from Northern Ireland, it's not really in our curriculum at all. I don't know if it is now, but it's not exactly a medium that people are really involved in from an early age. So how did that happen for you?
So I spent 10 years of my childhood in the Isle of Man. And then when I was 14, our whole family, we moved back to Northern Ireland. We were originally living in Hollywood. So then we moved to Coleraine, and my twin sister and I went to Limavady High School, and we had a year to do our GCSEs in it. Like, however, at the time, it wasn't ideal. But anyway, we're like, this is fine. Put our head down. We sort of picked the subjects one morning. I want to do these subjects. And we just started the next day and we did it. So part of that, I picked art. I'd always been interested in art, mainly sort of mixed media. I really just like making things, and I like making jewelry and that sort of stuff. And then through high school, there's a very good tech in Limavady that does a design crafts course. So I heard about that, and then I decided after my GCSEs, I want to go there and just do art. So it was through there on a Friday morning. We had, I think, like 2 hours in ceramics. I just loved it. Like, I walked through that door and I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I want to do. I think I was like 16. I don't particularly remember, but Mum says she remembers picking me up going, that's when you said you want to be a potter. And Mum was like, all right, like, sure, if you want it, like 16. It might be a thing.
And so then from there, you done your foundation and your national diploma and your foundation there. Yeah. And you chose to go to Cardiff. What prompted that? Do you have any connection to Cardiff at all?
No, I actually had never been. I mean, I vaguely knew it was in Wales. Like, that was about as far as my knowledge went. I was planning on going to Belfast from, I think, the beginning of the foundation year. I was like, Belfast is great. I'd met people who'd done that before. And then my tutor who taught ceramics then, Gaynor, she said, there's a very good course in Cardiff. If you want to go for like an open day, if you can, why not, just to see what it's like. And yeah, I dragged Mum along with me as well. And we were just walking around, and it was just, I don't know, it just had this sort of feel like it was, then when I was there, it was in the old building. It's now moved to like a new campus, but it was really kind of old, and there's like the ceramics department was on the ground floor, and it was out in like porta cabins around like a courtyard. It wasn't the most beautiful, but it was so like messy and clay everywhere, and loads of people sitting outside benches and having big deep conversations. And I was just like, this is it, this is where I want to go. So yeah, I was very lucky I got in, and I think there was about 30 in our year. There was quite a strong underlying fine art kind of side to it, more so than production pottery, which was really good to then learn, why am I making this? What do I want to say with my work? That was very good. And writing and having crits, and like it was very progressive in that way. But you were kind of left a bit to your own. There wasn't someone there going, this is how you make a handle, this is, that sort of thing. So you kind of did have to teach yourself quite a bit through that. But yeah, it was really good. I really enjoyed it.
Brilliant. And how did you find being slightly more self-led? I know I went and I had part of my course that was self-led, and I found it was a bit easier than once you left, because you didn't have instruction. You kind of could be a bit more independent with that learning. How did you adapt with that?
The bit I really found hardest when I left was the community. So we had our own little workspaces, and I had my wheel beside my desk, but there was they were called huts. I was in hut 1, and we had this kind of little family going on. But there was the mixture of the 3 years were all in the huts. So if you were making something, or you had a really bad group crit and you didn't know what your reading was or whatever, and you could just chat to someone over as you're making your cup of tea. And then that community was very hard once I wasn't there. It was like, who did I talk to? Or even bouncing ideas, I found very difficult when I first left.
I definitely think the same way about that, because I went to Ulster. I did also apply to go to Cardiff, because I heard that in Cardiff that they had a fantastic degree there, specifically for ceramics, a great space as well. And was Claire Cernine, was she a lecturer there, or did you get taught by Claire Cernine?
Yeah. So there was an Ingrid Murphy. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's from Cork. She kind of ran the ceramic department, and Claire Cernine, she was really good, but she was quite harsh. Like if you wanted a really honest review of your work, you would book a tutorial with her, but she was very good.
Did you pick the pottery wheel then in Limavady, going into ceramics knowing that you were going to continue on the pottery wheel, or was it something that as you were learning the skills in ceramics you fell more and more in love on the wheel?
So in Limavady, it was mainly hand building. I think it was just the time was so little. It was just a quicker way, I guess, of experimenting. And then we had, I think it was maybe 1 or 2 weeks where we could have a go. There was 2 wheels in the room, so we all had a go, and I really hated it. I was like, this is really messy, and I can't make anything, and I didn't like it at all. And then this summer before my second year, I helped out Adam Frew when he was in Flowerfield, so I helped him for a few weeks over the summer. And I was just doing like cleaning and that sort of stuff. And he let me go on the wheel then. So that was the first time I'd used porcelain and worked on the wheel. And I just really liked it. It sort of clicked.
And are you still using porcelain now? Is that what you're...
Yeah. I sort of stuck with porcelain. And then the odd time if I'm making like plant pots or something, not just for the garden, and it's like in stoneware, and I don't know, it doesn't feel right. It's very strange.
Your time in university then, what were you making? How did you develop your work then?
So I was, by my third year, I had really got into the theme of people coming together and having, a group around a table and the crack and the chat, and families. You might have like 3 generations, and stories would be told and everything, always around a table, usually around food. So this idea of, well, then at the end of the day, there would be all this washing up to do, and it would typically, I don't want to say this, but would be the women of the house would end up cleaning all this up, and then there would be more crack and maybe wine. So my whole theme was around making the washing up board of dirty, like they weren't dirty, but they were all piled up of cups and saucers. And I had really got into gas firing and reduction. So I just loved the sort of energy of that, the flame, and how it affected the glazes, and there's a real warmth from especially red iron. If you put that in a reduction kiln, it's just like magic. So that was kind of my colour scheme, blues and greens and some browns as well got in there. But looking back now, I didn't have the skill to make what I wanted to. So I was battling, okay, well, I need to make more and more and more to get my practice up. But I had this idea of what I wanted to make at the same time. So yeah, I'm glad I did it. It was really good. And we went to Art and Clay with our degree show, which is in Hatfield. And then we went to New Designers in London, and just being out there and having people looking at your work when you just graduated was like really fun.
Wow.
I really liked it.
And what was life like in Cardiff then? As I said, I did apply to go to Cardiff, but I lost the nerve about the whole moving thing. And I'm such a homebody as well. I was like, no, I'll just go to Ulster. But what was that like?
Cardiff, to say it was a culture shock was like not even the word I'm looking for. Where I lived since I was 14 here in Coleraine, it's the middle of nowhere, like countryside, like you can't walk anywhere or whatever, you'd always be driving. And then in Cardiff, where our halls were right in the city centre, we went on nights out and you could walk home. And to me, I was like, this is amazing. It was so funny. There was only one other girl in the whole of my year and sort of friend group who was Irish. I think everyone else was English or Welsh. So it was really interesting just meeting different people and being in a city. And the Welsh culture as well is quite a sarcastic, dry humour. And there was a very good friend of mine, Sam, she was from Birmingham, and the two of us sat beside each other. That's how we got to become really good friends. And there was a caretaker came in and said something, and we were like, I don't know what he said. And then this other girl who's in our class, Lisa, is Welsh. She's from Swansea. And she replied, and we just presumed he was speaking Welsh. Like, this was our perception. And he said something like sarcastic. And then Lisa was like, did you not understand what he said? And we were like, oh my God, no. It just went over our head. At the beginning, I thought everyone was being deadly serious. And I was like, people are really mean. But they were just their humour. So I quickly learned.
And being a twin as well, you were obviously separate from your sister at the time. What was that like? Just assuming that you're joined at the hip if you're a twin.
We were, yeah. So we moved at 14 to here. So we started a new school. We had no real understanding of school systems, or we didn't even know what a transfer test was. Like, we were completely blind to all of Northern Irish education. So we came here and we were terrified. Like, we were very shy. I don't think we spoke to anyone, and we were both very tall. So I remember like walking into school and the two of us being like heads and shoulders above everyone else. They were like, okay, we can do this. Then I stayed in the Mavati for an extra year to do the foundation, and she went to Enniskillen. She did equine management as her degree. So she's very into horses and all. So that kind of gave us the first time we were kind of separate. But, you know, we were only a drive away. Like, we weren't that far.
Yeah.
By the time I went to Cardiff, we kind of got used to living not beside each other. But yeah, she came over and I would go over to hers, and yeah, it was good crack. And then she went off traveling. So I don't know where she even started. I think she started in Australia and then worked her way around the world and did all South America. And then she's been now in Sydney, I think the last 5 years or something. Like, she lives there basically now, and so does my older sister. So we've kind of just grown to, you know, be independent, which is grand now, but I remember at the time being like, oh, Jenny, don't go.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was quite traumatic.
It was different, really. It'll be good if she can, you know, they can come home sometime, but I don't know whenever that will happen.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's also different now, isn't it?
Isn't it? It's crazy, all these things you took for granted. But
And so how did you find graduation and coming home again?
When I graduated, so I met my partner, he's from Cardiff, so we got together when I was in my second year. So by the time of my third year, I realised I don't have the skill to be a production potter, and that's what I wanted to do. I want to set up my own studio and cafe or whatever at that time. Was sort of a pipe dream. I then applied for Thomastown in Kilkenny, which is like a real intensive production pottery course. And I didn't get in. I wasn't accepted. So when I graduated, and that was my only plan, like I had no other plan. So Thomas, who's my partner, he was like, well, look, we'll move, like we'll go somewhere. We don't have to go to Kilkenny. And I was like, but that's my dream. That's what I want to do. And then I think it was literally the week before the graduating ceremony, I got a call from Gus saying, we have an extra space. Will you come and have an interview? So I was like, oh my God, like I was so nervous. I couldn't believe this was happening. I think it was, had my graduation and like the next day I was in Kilkenny. It was very tight time and had my interview, and I brought like a bag full of pottery off my graduation show. Yeah, and it was really good. It was very exciting, and seeing the mill and how everyone gets on together and like the roles and I loved it. It was really, really exciting. I mean, it was hard work, I'm not gonna lie, but yeah, it was definitely what I needed at the time.
But obviously it was meant to be.
Yeah, it just sort of happened. I know, it was crazy.
And what was it like there? We know that weren't you studying there at the same time as Fiona Shannon?
Yeah,
yes.
And Claire Murdoch, who was on the Throwdown. We were all in that group. So that was 4 years ago we graduated, which is mental. Yeah, it was very good. It was going from a degree which was very art-led and freedom and kind of made what you want to do. And you were very much, well, you're an individual and this is what you want to create, so you have to do that kind of thing. And then going from that to Thomastown, where you start at 9, you have a list of 100 mugs of exactly the same, and you sit at the wheel until they're perfect, otherwise nothing gets fired, and you sit there and remake. That first 6 weeks was like, oh my God, I just want to make and fire and glaze something, because I had been so used to that. I found it very tough because I kind of had to unlearn what I had kind of taught myself. Mm-hmm. And forget that, and then take tuition from the tutors, and just really train your eye to be on every single form all the time. And like 2 millimeters was considered, you're pushing it, and it was like 2 millimeters. I know. It was really tight.
At the end of Thomastown, do you leave with a full product range, or is that something that you're developing along the way, or is it a skill set that you can then leave and develop all of the amazing work that you've now come to be known for?
So the first year of Thomastown is very much production. On the Monday morning, like there was 3 tutors. There was Gus, Anne and Jeff, and depending which week, they sort of took one each. On the Monday morning, they would make, I don't know, like a vase or whatever. So there's 12 of us on the course. You would sit and watch them make 12, and you could ask questions and like take notes on how they do it. So they give you one freshly thrown each back to your wheel, and you sit there and you make exactly the same, with the same weight of clay for the week, essentially. So then that goes on for most of the first year. Once you get better and you get things fired, once they get passed, you can't just fire, they come and critique them. And the beginning, I think I got about 3 pots through. I was just like, oh, great, thanks. I'll try harder. Whatever you got, you could fire. Then you were sort of playing around with glazes, and the chemistry and that sort of thing was also there. So by the end of the first year, we kind of had a mini exhibition, but it was quite similar work to what we had been throwing. So similar shapes kind of thing. Maybe we had done a few wood firings and stuff as well, but it was quite basic. So then the second year is a product development year, essentially. So you get to test as many glazes as you want, and different kilns and techniques. You can throw on a momentum wheel if you wanted. You could do loads of stuff, and then you designed things. So you would go along and you'd be like, well, I'll tweak that glaze with, you'll do like a line blend of 10 different colors with a 1% increase, and see what you like and what you don't like. It's really, really good. You got so much information so quick because you were just focused on this all the time. That's when I discovered crystal glazes, because I was still really interested in reduction gas firing, but I came to the quick realization, I'm very lucky over the years I've collected bits of equipment So I had an electric kiln, and I was like, I can't then just leave and then have had no income for 2 years, essentially. Where is this magic gas kiln going to come from? So I was like, okay, I have an electric kiln. What's the, exciting thing can I do with that? And then came across crystal glazes. So they're a type of a glaze. A traditional glaze, you don't want to run off the pot. You want it to be a stable coating. And then crystal glaze, chemically, is a glass, essentially, because there's nothing that stops it running. But as it's running, there's a lot of a zinc oxide, and that zinc makes like a nucleus. And as the glaze runs, that grows crystals. So it's like magic. Really, you just don't know what is going to come out of the kiln. Like sometimes it could be nothing. Like you could have a whole kiln of not one crystal, and then you drop it by 5 degrees and they're all crystals. Like it's just really good fun. But yeah, it's not the most practical of avenues. I basically did about 6 weeks of just crystal glazes and researched every single magazine article I could find and found potters who did it, without being like, how do you make it? But, trying to get like little hints and tips from them. And I didn't get crystals for 4 weeks. And I was like, what am I doing wrong? I couldn't get this to work. And then slowly tiny ones would grow and then built it up. So because of that, that's why I really stuck with crystals. And by my end of show that year, so I think it was like July, maybe, that's what I did. I did a whole installation of crystal plates and it was really good fun. I really, really liked it. But looking back, maybe should have also thought about more functional work, but sure, it's all right.
Is it crystalline glazes or crystal glazes? Is it just the same thing?
So there's two. There's a crystalline glaze is kind of like the umbrella term of any glaze that's kind of sparkly, essentially. And then macro crystals are like the ones that I try to make, like the big single crystals.
Okay. Wow. And is that, I know there's different types. There's like a bloom or there's like a frosted or something. Is that?
Yeah, it's on the different temperatures. So you basically fire up as quick as you can to stoneware cone 10 temperature. So like 1280, 1290. And then you drop it and cool it as quick as you can to around 1100. And typically that's when crystals like to grow. Mm-hmm. So if you're right at the top of that bracket, then you get quite spiky frost kind of patterns. And then if you're maybe in the cooler section, they kind of go more like petals.
So is it more the firing schedule that determines the crystal, or is it the glaze recipe, or is it just a bit of a both?
Or it's just magic?
Yeah. It's all three. I mean, it depends also what shape your pot is, the type of kiln. There's some people I know use gas to fire, and I don't even know where you would begin with that. There is so many variables. So when they don't work, it's really hard because you're like, oh, well, I'll cool it down. I'll put a bit more percentage of zinc in it. But then you just don't know what is working or what's not. So there's quite a lot of testing.
As a non-ceramicist, obviously, what is the difference between electric and gas other than the energy source? I know that if you put some ceramics in and it's closer to the flame, it'll turn out slightly different. Is that the difference that you're talking about in terms of creating crystals and unreliability?
Like a gas kiln and a gas and a wood kiln are essentially, you're using a fuel to make fire, and that's what heats your pot. So in order for the fire to heat, you need oxygen. So you can, in a gas and a wood kiln, you can sort of restrict the oxygen supply, making the flame take the oxygen out of the pot, essentially. So certain chemical or oxides would have a lot of oxygen atoms on them. So if you're pulling that out, you're changing their colors, you're changing the way sort of look and feel of the piece. But a electric kiln is like a big oven, essentially. You just heat it up, it cools down. So there's not so much happening with the pots, essentially. They're just, it's more reliable, but then crystals are kind of another ballpark. So,
And do you need then a special controller for your kiln then to be able to do those cooling rates and to is the schedule going up to that top temperature? Is there anything special about it, or is it just all about the cooling?
Pretty much all about the cooling. So my controller, I think, had like a kind of the normal one you would buy with your kiln would maybe have 3 or 4 steps. So usually you would go up to about 500 and then a bit faster to top temperature, and then it would just switch off. Whereas the one I got has 20 steps.
Oh, okay.
So like I mean, I would only really use 10 of them, but it's good if I was to go mad and put 20 steps if I could. But I don't know, maybe I have some magical crystals then.
Yeah, you must have a lot of kiln shelves. Have you ever had any major disasters doing those glazes? I know that they're very runny and
too many. The worst thing I did was in Thomastown. I think it was like the second kiln load I had done, and it was a small top loader that I had just kind of, anyone could use it, but I sort of was like, okay, I'm going to use this 3 times a week, and if you really need it, by all means help yourself. But that was just sort of my plan. And it was like the second time, and I opened the lid and it was all sparkling crystals. I was like, oh, I've done it. I like this. And everything was stuck to the shelf without fail. And it was like all down the sides of the shells. And I was like, please don't be on the element. Like, luckily it wasn't. The kiln was all right. But oh my word. And the angle grinding for about a day, stood in the cold, shaving all this glaze off. I was like, okay, this is my lesson. I need to make little catchers, so they're like kind of like a saucer that the pots sit on, so you have to get the join of the two very close, otherwise the glaze will seep in around and go everywhere. So that's when I was like, okay, I need to spend more time making these little catchers. But it was a lesson. I mean, I'm glad I learned it then instead of now.
And kiln shelves as well are so expensive.
Oh my god,
insane.
I know.
Just a shelf, that you put stuff on. I should have like a whole exhibition of kiln shelves. Without them,
you could do that.
You would see some real stories there, I think.
Are any of them salvageable whenever they, pour over and you have to take them off the shelf, or do you actually physically have to break them off?
No, sometimes you could get something off, but I mean, I'm kind of the thing, like, I don't count my pots as finished, even if they're beautiful and I see them in the kiln, like, oh, that's beautiful. I don't count it until it's out the kiln, sanded and polished, because there's so many bits that you could take it off and it looks grand and there'll be a crack in the bottom, or it's just ceramic. So if they're stuck, I literally just smash them off. Just get it over with.
A big cathartic experience to get that out of your system. Yeah. Can you refire them then? So if you don't get the crystals, there's sometimes I really struggle with some pinholes in my glazes. Like, I'm doing something super stupidly simple where it's a white glaze on some terracotta. The occasional one, I'll have like a little pinhole, or like there'll be little dimples or something, and it's a bane of my life. And it's really frustrating. Sometimes if there's loads of them, I'll give it a quick respray again, stick it back in, and hope it won't like crack or whatever. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Can you do that with a piece that has a crystal glaze on it? Can you refire it again?
I mean, you could refire a pot 100 times. If you were it's just this thermal shock is what would kill it eventually. But I find the thing with crystal glaze is, in order to get it to be really runny and flow off, my glaze is like honey, like it's so thick, and I basically just get as much possible onto the pot. Like, they don't look pretty before they go in. So when they're fired and it's like the shiny glaze, it's quite hard to get that glaze to stick on. Mm-hmm. So I found I basically paint it on and then heat it up with the blowtorch and put another layer and another layer. And like, sometimes it works. I wouldn't really do it more than 3 times. This is not really worth it. I mean, unless it was something massive and I really, really loved it. But you could reglaze things. But yeah, pinholes, I get that a bit on my like mugs and plates still. And I just put a little bit more glaze on and put it back in, and 9 times out of 10 it's grand. It's just fine.
My kilns are usually made up of a percentage of recently
Yeah.
glazed stuff and then reglazed.
I'm the same. I think, what is it, like potters are very grounded people, because like literally you're gonna break half of it anyway. So
Yeah. So can you do, I know we're talking a lot about the glazing here, but I'm just so
yeah.
fascinated in the technical aspect of it. Can you do it on earthenware at all? Or is it just strictly like stoneware is where it's happening?
I think you can. There's a few working in crystalline, I think it's called, as a Facebook group that is very good for just picking up tips. And I'm sure there are people who work on a white earthenware. It just depends on your glaze structure. So, I mean, it's 50% of frit, which is very quick melting, but that's kind of what you need. So I think it just depends on what levels of frit you have in your glaze. But I don't see how it wouldn't work, really.
Yeah,
I think it
okay.
could. Yeah. But I love when I'm working, because I work with porcelain, so it's a very, very white, which then any colour on top of that really comes out. My recipes, they're pretty simple. Yeah, it doesn't really, you can't really start with the recipe. It's more how you fire it, how you apply it, what shape it's on. Like, there's, again, so many variables, but definitely worth a try. I'd
Oh,
love to see
yeah.
if you can do it. I think it'd be
Oh,
great.
yeah. Oh no, I don't think I'd ever attempt it. I did
Oh.
I did try it whenever I was in uni once. I was working with some porcelain and I did try crystalline glaze on a few very small pieces, but I just don't think that they were the right shape and I don't think that I cooled it properly. And again, there's just so many variables and I gave up far too quickly, mostly because, there's all those deadlines and everything and I was like, no, this isn't going the way I wanted to go fast enough. So
Yeah, I
I
was
didn't
lucky
ever.
with Thomastown that I could just sit and do it, because I think any other scenario I would have been the same. I'm like, no, I'm not getting any result. I'm not doing this.
And is there anything that you need to do after it comes out of the kiln at all? Is there any treatment? Is it very porous? Is it food safe?
When they come out, especially vases, because they're all on their catchers, so that's basically attached with a very thin layer of the glaze as it runs off. So you heat it up with a blowtorch and that kind of cracks the glass part, but then that edge is very sharp. So there's a lot of sanding and polishing and getting it really nice and clean. I always say it's not food safe because technically it's just a glass with like frosted crystals in. So any sort of acidic foods or anything like that could, stay in there. You're not going to be able to wash it essentially to get the bacteria out. So on the rare occasion I make like a mug or something, I put like just a standard glaze on the inside and then maybe just put the crystals on the outside. Yeah, that's basically they're a decorative glaze, I think. But there's nothing stopping you if you yourself wanted to make crystals. I mean, go for it. Have a whole dinner set.
After Thomastown then, what was next? What did you have lined up?
That was 4 years ago now. I left Thomastown and my partner, he worked for Iceland, the food company down in Waterford, but we lived near Kilkenny. And he was a store manager and there was a new store opening in Gorey in Wexford just after I was graduating. So I was like, perfect, we'll move nearer Wexford and we'll look for somewhere which has like a shed or something and I can just be a potter. And that was my plan. The, setbacks and everything happened, but there was literally, again, one of these moments of luck. This guy who was a potter himself came into the mill literally on one of our last weeks and said, he's an English guy, Jerry, and he says, I'm renting this house in Carnew, which is at the very bottom of Wicklow, but really not far from Gorey. And there's like an old outhouses. It's a 3-bedroom house. I'm looking for someone to rent it. Is anyone available? And I didn't talk to him initially. I think it was Claire Murdoch was like, hold on, I'll get Babs. And like she came running in and was just like, you need to talk to this man. I was like, all right. So then we went to see it and it was like really reasonable to rent. And we're like, yeah, perfect, no problem. We're moving in. But then, so I said, okay, brought all my equipment that Mum was keeping in her garage, drove all that down, set up. We were just like, okay, this is it. I'm going to be a potter. And then Thomas's store got postponed and wasn't working. So he ended up working in head office in Dublin. So he was driving up and down. Technically should take you under an hour, but traffic in Dublin, it was 2 hours each way. So it was a long time for him. But yeah, he said he was happy doing it because we could afford to live there. And then I really underestimated going from a very tight community, because by then there was 10 of us, and every like 3 times a day we had communal tea breaks. We were like, everyone knew it. We would go to the pub to get, like, we were really close, really good friends. And then suddenly I was in this area in this brand new house. I didn't know anyone. I was sat in a garage which had like a broken window and it was freezing. And I was making these pots and I was just like, what am I doing? This is not my, dream of doing this pottery thing. So I did that till about January. So I really went for it, and I was like, okay, I'll do a Christmas, I'll do a market, I went for it. But eventually I was like, look, this is not right. It just didn't work. So then I think it was the end of January, the Showcase is a big trade show in Dublin. I didn't go to it, but I did get a free ticket, and I was really kicking myself I didn't go. But one of my friends was talking to Caro, who's a potter in Dublin, and Caro was asking Gail, do you know anyone who's looking for a job? I need an assistant to help. And then Gail texts me, and within 2 minutes I had rang Caro and was like, hi, I'm Babs, I need a job. Like, please hire me. So then I went up for an interview, as I have basically my son, but he is a dog. I am aware he's a dog called Harry. And I then went for an interview, and she had these 2 dogs, Lilu and Grania. And I was just like, oh my God, this is meant to be. So we were trying to be really like professional, and like, yeah, we have a waiting thing, and if we get on, we'll sign the contracts. But like, it just worked. We just really got on really well, and all our dogs got on really well. And
perfect.
It was really good, and literally it saved me, because without that I would have just gone, I'm not doing this. I'm going to just get a normal, in quotes, job and just do something else. So I then was driving up to Dublin as well 3 days a week, and doing my own thing 2 days a week. And it was just, again, I was like, Carnew, as lovely as it was, and we had the house and the space, it just wasn't working for us. And I should have accepted it earlier, but I was just like, we need to move. We either need to be in Dublin, or we need to go somewhere and live and work in the same place. Would be really good. So then we did that for a year. We lived in Carnew for a year, and I think it was in the summer, we were up in Coleraine with my parents, and we were talking this through, and Mum and Dad were just like, well, just move your stuff up here. And there was an apartment coming up for rent in Dublin, and we were just like, it was the same price as our lovely big house, but it was like, well, why don't we just do it just to see how it goes? But we did that for like 3 years, and we were up here for 4 days, down there for 3 days. So it sounds mad, but it worked. Like, we were just happy. We had kind of 2 lives, 2 of everything. It worked. Yeah, it was really good. So with working for Caro really taught me like the business side of it. So she's a slipcaster, works in porcelain, but very illustrative work. Would be completely different to what I had ever done. Like, I'd never slipcasted anything before. And being like the thrower, I was like, oh, this will be dead easy. And within like 2 weeks, I was like, everything's come out wonky. None of the colours are right. Anyway, I don't know how she put up with me for that beginning, because I was really bad at it. But then with her, we moved studios to Harold's Cross, and it was much bigger studio. And we started running classes, and I had this group every Thursday who stayed for like a year. They just kept signing on, and like, we were really great friends. It was really good. It was a really lovely place, and really good crack as well. Like, really enjoyed it. And she also did the RDS and the showcase every year, and the flea market. So just by being there, I like picked up loads of just information on how to do things, and met friends through that and stuff. So it was really good. I really enjoyed that.
I'm a big fan of Caro's pieces.
And
they're just gorgeous. They're so lovely. I love watching her make as well. And we go into some people's Instagrams that, they have different styles and they have different kind of energies. And just whenever you go on there, it's so refreshing. It's so inspiring or something. It's just, she's got a lot of different
stories.
techniques.
And like, I didn't know any old Irish fables. Like I just was never something I'd read or whatever. And she would find these little stories of like a fox with a gold tooth, and then suddenly this whole range would come out, and it was like, I thought we were supposed to be having a day off, and then she comes in with all these amazing ideas for stuff. No, it's like a little magic land. It's very cool.
But then what prompted the move then?
That was a really hard decision. So from that time when I decided to move my studio up here, and Tom as well, he said, well, I'll stay working in Dublin until up here sort of takes off, and then we'll make the move. And it did take 3 years, but we eventually did it. But so basically Mum and Dad's house, it's a Georgian country house that has like a derelict courtyard and stables and a little annex cottage. So they were never used. They were sort of falling into disrepair. So we asked Mum, I asked her, I said, I'll just put my kiln and wheel out there, like it's not being used. And then the more we sort of were talking about it, it was like, this could be so much more. Like we could really turn this into a proper pottery and a cafe, like a destination, and have classes and exhibitions and like pop-up Christmas things. We were just going mad with what we could do with this place. So early on, we realized it's a very big project. This is going to take a lot of time and money, and we don't want to rush into it or do it a half job either. So we met with an architect just to see, is it feasible? It's all grade 2 listed. So even getting a change of use, putting a skylight in, like anything, like even the gates were listed. We couldn't even move anything. It was ridiculous. But I mean, it was the other side of it. Like we wanted to keep all this history and heritage as well. We felt that was going to be part of it. So we got him on board and had drawings done and realized our entrance is too near a bend, so we needed to put a new road in. We needed a car park, disabled access. Like it was just, the list was growing and growing and growing. So eventually when was that? I think in October, possibly. Yeah, we finally got everybody on board and had the contractors, so many people, but we were like, we have to do this properly. So then at the beginning of this year, the work started. So that's when Thomas and I made the decision, okay, Christmas, I'm going to finish with Caro. I'll see her right up to Christmas. I wouldn't do that, just drop you like 2 weeks before. So we did that, and it was really hard. I found it really hard leaving because it was like this place I had got so comfortable and learned so much, and I didn't want to just go and do my own thing. But it really was the right time because, well, apart from Corona, like there's a huge amount of work I've had to do. Like I needed to basically start a new business and have a new range and like new everything. So I couldn't keep that up working there and doing that. And then Thomas, so I think it was February, he handed his notice in and he moved up at the end of March. And had a job lined up here. Yeah, then the world closed. So yeah, from the end of March, Thomas, myself and Mum and Dad have all been living in one house all together. And I've been making pots. And luckily, as of last week, Thomas now has a job and he's got accepted into uni. Like it's just all ticking.
Amazing.
But yeah, it was kind of not the best time in hindsight to move everything, but sure.
You'd never know those things though anyway. How do you find sharing space then with your family and having a studio and stuff there? Gemma, and I know that your mum is also a ceramicist.
Yeah, so Mum, when we all moved here back when I was 14, she sort of started an arts class in Flowerfields in Portstewart just to make friends and do something because she was new to the area as well. So, and then through that, in the Isle of Man, we had a little small holding and rescued lots of endangered sheep. So that's what then Mum decided when she started this pottery class. She was like, well, I know the shape of a sheep's head from having so many pets. So she just started making little sheep, and then that grew into people buying them. And yeah, so she's done that ever since. So the two of us shared the same space, and we have 2 kilns, kind of one each, but we both use both of them. And Yeah, it's just really good. It's really nice just to have someone else down, you know, when I'm working. Yeah, and us all living together so we've done it kind of half of the week for the last 3 years, so it wasn't completely culture shock. But yeah, there was a few times, especially because we couldn't even go anywhere. Like, you're literally stuck. Like, we couldn't even, like, we walked to the road and that was about it. But we got there. We're doing much better, and now we can go out a bit more. I think, we're definitely still talking. There's no hard feelings.
Wonderful.
It seems to have just affected everyone in different ways, hasn't it? I think being a ceramicist and maybe having your studio so local, for me anyway, has been a real saving thing. It did take some time where I didn't go in and I didn't make, and that was more just because I closed my Etsy shop and I didn't want to really go down to the post office. I have really bad asthma, and the idea of a respiratory disease was just like, no thank you. But then I kind of realized, oh crap, I should be making stock and just maybe using this time probably a bit better. And I did then kind of give myself a bit of a kick up the backside. But do you find then that, I mean, it was 12 weeks essentially, wasn't it, that we still are not exactly fully back in to normality.
But it's getting there. I think hopefully by the end of the summer we'll be out in the world. But then, so at the end of March, when it was quite unlucky timing, but Thomas, he was coming up and down, and Dublin had closed. I think like lockdown happened there 2 weeks before it was up here. Mm-hmm. So there was 1 week he came up for the weekend, and he kind of was like, maybe I shouldn't have come up because I might get stuck here, or if I go back down on Monday, I'm going to get stuck in Dublin. And at that time, his office was still open, so people were still going into the office. And then the next weekend he came up, and it was supposed to be his last week of work. And he came here and he was like, I don't feel well. And we're like, oh no. Like, quarantined him upstairs in a bedroom on his own. And there was another person in his office had also, I think a few days before, had said she didn't feel well. And then within 2 weeks, we were all sick. We're pretty sure we all had it. And it just like, it was the weirdest feeling ever. It's like an out of body. Within half an hour increments, I could feel myself getting sicker and sicker. And I was like, this isn't happening. It can't, like, you know, you read these stories of people are asymptomatic and they don't know they have it. And then I was like, but I just feel a bit like I have a flu or whatever. And then by the time Dad got it, he was really bad. He couldn't get out of bed for about 2 weeks. And then there was 2 days where we were like, okay, if he keeps getting worse, we're going to have to take him to hospital. Like, we were like, okay, we're prepared. He'll be fine. And luckily, touch wood, the next morning he could sit up and he just turned the corner. I'm like, oh my goodness. So overall, we basically didn't do anything for about 6 weeks. And by the time Thomas was the first to get sick, then me, then Mum, then Dad. But so by the time Dad was in the worst of it, Thomas was really feeling better. But we didn't leave. We completely locked down, and our neighbours were very good and brought us food and everything. But then that sort of made us all think, like, why are we, we need to take some time off. This is probably never going to happen again, that we have this time to just do things we've wanted to do. And like, we started gardening and growing vegetables, and we were clearing out cupboards, and I started baking bread, and then no one ate the bread. So I was like, I'm not making any more bread. So we really just took like 2 months off. We were just like, no, this is our break. We're going to have a holiday. So it was really refreshing at the end of it. I don't want to go back to running on that treadmill of, working all the hours every day and go, 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 go. Because I was like, there's no fun in that. So it kind of, opened all our eyes to slow down, I think, which was, we're quite thankful for in a weird way, I suppose.
And so obviously you were working on getting your cafe and pottery studio up and running. Like, how has that affected your plans, your schedule, or anything like that?
So our schedule of works at the beginning so that was given to us in January, and like every month we've had meetings and updates. And then the lockdown happened and everything was off site, everything was locked up, nobody was working. So that delayed us by 2 months, really. But originally in the contract, they had kind of added 2 months as contingency anyway. So when they all came back on site, they were like, our deadline is October. They're hoping to have the works done by. And we're still going for October. We have come to the decision, we're going to finish it. We're going to kit it all out. We're going to move the pottery in there, but we're going to hold off with the cafe until next spring, hopefully. Because it's a small space. Like it's 2 stables and a garage. Like it's not massive. It's an old 17th century building. So if there's any social distancing, I mean, we'll get like 4 people in there. So it's not really worth having it all open. But if we're all up and running and, it gives us a bit of time to get the pottery going and see the space and feel what it's like. And then maybe around Christmas time, we do like a pop-up weekend of like mince pies and carols or, like something. I know,
Sounds incredible.
Christmas.
So Christmas mad, honestly. If I could have Christmas.
Mad.
That you've just got me so excited about Christmas. And like I'm always excited about Christmas. So
I can vouch for that.
We both Robin and I have had Christmas days in like July's and June's, and we went to each other's studio. I remember I went to Robin's studio whenever she was in East Belfast and brought a bag of porcelain and just sat in her studio and made decorations in like I think it was June or July.
Find Christmas cake, so we had to have chocolate cake and pretend, and it was
Sure. And then Robin has came to mine. We are Christmas mad. But it's the best time of year for selling. All the rest of the year is just the time you need to use to make your Christmas stock, and then suddenly you're like, go, go, go.
And also, like, when I was working with Caro, so the month of December, I would just live in Dublin full time because we had the shop open and we had classes and painting decorations and mulled wine. Like, we went full out for the month. And just the excitement, I mean, it was contagious. Like when people came in and they had their list and they were like, oh, Auntie Bridget, she'll like this, we'll get that, what about the teacher? Like they're just walking around the shop and you're just there rapping as fast as you can and you're just like, thanks so much, Merry Christmas. Like it's such a buzz. I love it, I really do.
Your project that you're developing now in these gorgeous stables, what exactly is the plan?
I mean, it started with I'll put the kiln in the stable and I'll make pots. And then again, it grew a wee bit more. And then we're like, again, we're 5 miles between Coleraine and Garva on the main road, but it is the middle of nowhere. It's like, really. So I was like, we need, people use cups and bowls and plates to eat from and drink coffee. And why can't we supply that as well? And have like a real celebration of handmade ceramics, and if people are coming and using them, then it's more likely going to click and they're going to purchase something or they're going to appreciate it more. So then the cafe came in, and so my brother and his partner, they live in the Isle of Man, still they didn't move here when we were teenagers. They're they're huge foodies. I mean, I think their hobby is coffee shops, if there is a such thing. Like they will travel everywhere and just go to coffee shops. So they have been really great input. Like they're really helping us all plan it. And Mum, again, she's a big foodie. So yeah, we're really excited to get this going. So that's when the cafe came in, like, well, they're going to come out this far. You might as well give them a coffee. And then, so we've got a small menu. We're keeping it all local, very seasonal. We're big into growing vegetables and everything. So we're going to keep it as sustainable as possible. So that's where that came in. And then Patrick, the architect, when we had a few meetings with him and like had no idea what pottery. I mean, it was like, do you make tiles? I was like, no, like cups and bowls and plates. That's what I make. So like I showed them what the studio I had, like I've set up at the moment downstairs, and he was like, okay, so we need the big window and we need you sat on your wheel in front of the window. And I was like, is it going to be like a zoo? Like, is it going to be weird? And we need tables and we need old nails left in the A-frames. It's like it's like you're sat in a barn and all. Like I'm really excited to see how it's going to be finished. So then this grew again and again and again. So yeah, it's getting there.
That is so inspiring. I can feel your energy just through the screen, keeping it so local. That is literally the
Yeah.
dream.
And we found also through the years, like the North Coast, there is, and hopefully with more people staying at home and staycations, and there is a really good coffee food scene around here. And yeah, I just think, why not? Why not just have a nice sign and direct people this way? They're up here anyway. So
I don't think we actually named your mum. Your mum is Iris Belshaw.
just
The
mum, to
Belshaw,
really.
yeah. Your mum, she is very well known for making her wonderful sheep and her rams. But your mum is also involved in a project you are also semi-involved in the number 4 Queen Street, which
Yeah,
was previously number 6 Queen Street, which
the
is
other
very
way around.
exciting.
So it was
Oh,
number
is it? Oh,
4,
sorry.
and they've just moved 2 doors up to a bigger shop. So it's now number 6.
Oh, yes. I do also stop by work there, so I should have known that.
You
But
do. I've seen your work. It looks very good.
oh, you're too kind. It's not a million miles away. It's like an hour's drive, maybe not. So it's not that extreme, but I still kind of see it as though it's the other side of the world.
I know. That's it. Like Thomas and I found, because we were driving to Dublin twice a week, we're kind of like, oh, we'll just go to Belfast for dinner. And this was before lockdown. And we're like, yeah, that's fine. And then even people in Coleraine, and they're like, you work in Dublin? I'm like, yeah, it's 3 hours. And they're like, 3 hours? And I'm like, oh, sure, it's just down the road. But I know in another year or two, when I'm just Coleraine and don't go out Coleraine, I will be the same. Don't worry.
You'll be like, how did I ever do that? That's mad.
I know.
I used to think it was mad traveling from Newton Abbey to Belfast to Castlereagh to do my national diploma, my foundation, because I was like, oh, I have to get 2 buses. But you have, yeah, just blown that out of the water.
But that's not normal. People shouldn't drive 3 hours to work. That's not right.
How involved are you in that project then? It's quite a unique space that they have up there, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So I don't know if it's quite like a co-op, or it's basically about 4 or 5, maybe 6. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. People set it up. So they are all crafters and makers. And as part of setting it up, they don't sell enough one month. They would put money in to pay the rent, or vice versa. So if they have now moved down to shops, and it's 4 times the size of what they were in this small one, so they have just seen their sales fly, which has been so good, because it's really good stuff, like all local, very beautiful, handmade. Like if you need a present, it is the place to go. And then the people who have set it up, they sell their work with no commission. So I just supply a maker, and I then pay a commission before, I get paid for whatever. But yeah, they're very good. And when I was setting up the Blackheath Pottery, there's a guy, John Wright, and he makes lovely like lanterns.
Yeah.
And I was asking him, I was like, what sort of card reader do you have? And he was like, go talk to this person and they'll sort you out. Say that I sent you. And then I was like, okay, and what about packaging? Oh, go to this. Like, they're just this wealth of knowledge. Like, if you need any help, you just go in one day and they're usually all around. And yeah, it's great crack. And they're really nice people.
I was beside his stall in Derry up at the Guildhall, and oh my God, can he sell work? That is like, I had a queue in front of my stall for his stall because surprised. He is just amazing at selling stuff. He just knows his product inside out anyway, and every maker will, but he just knows how to engage the customer so well, and I think that's probably what his success has been. But yeah, I was very jealous. I mean, they're lovely people, but I was kind of like, God, I need to make what they're making.
And there was one year I was helping Caro in the RDS, and John was also in the RDS, and literally you just saw him flash by like with 2 coffees, and he was like, hi, can't stop. Like literally he was just, they were flying, these lanterns. They were just, you couldn't keep them on his table. I was like, how do you even do that? But yeah, it's amazing. They're very good. And there's another one, Marion. I think she was an accountant before. She makes scarves and ties and lovely shawls and uses lots of like Liberty print. It's beautiful. I really, really like her work. But because she has this accountancy numbers mind, she is very on it. So like she's very good help. Like that side of things really was a struggle at the beginning. I was like, oh, I just want to make pots. I don't want to do this. But yeah, I certainly quickly realized, yeah, we need to be realistic. This is a business. So she was very, very good help in all that as well.
As a maker, you just have to have all those hats on. You need to be the maker, which seems to just kind of take a back seat. What would you say is the most difficult aspect of being a maker?
Where to begin? I think at the beginning, the hardest thing I found was because, again, like the crystal glazes, I'm like a magpie. I'm like, I see something, oh, I want to make that, I'll make that. Or, oh, I need a teapot, oh, let's put them in production. And then I'm like, I've only made 5 teapots this week, and I'm like, that's annoying. So that's the bit, like focusing it down to almost taking the emotion out of it to an extent of, okay, these are products, this cost me this much to make it, how do I sell it, as if you have bought it from somebody else and you're selling it on. That's kind of how I had to get my head around, because otherwise I'm like, oh, I'll sit in the studio floating my day away and I'll make lovely cups. And then, I need to be realistic, and because this is now my full-time gig, and I don't want to burn myself out in 2 years and be like, I never want to make a pot again in my life. So that's definitely the bit, like just the learning curve, really. But I was very naive at the beginning. I just didn't think that was, oh, I'll be fine. Sure, I'll just put this price on it and it'll be grand. But yeah, I really should have, at the very, very beginning, sat down and be like, no, we're not charging less than this for this piece.
Do you have a favourite making process, or do you have a favourite item that you love making, from start to finish? As you mentioned, your teapots. Do you have a piece that you think you just really love making those pieces?
So with my Blackheath range is very utilitarian, like it's useful to be used every day, but like I still want everything to be beautiful. Like this is my thing. So the one thing I really love making is the large serving bowls. So they're like a big pasta salad that you put on the table and you'd have lots of people around. And with porcelain, there's a 20% shrinkage rate. So when you're making it, it seems massive, and then by the time it's fired and glazed, it's kind of normal sized. So when the studio's filled with serving bowls, it just feels like, oh, I've made thousands of things, because like every shelf is filled with these, and they're just lovely because you can't rush them because they will just flop over and sit on the wheel. So you have to really take your time and knead your clay really well. It's very cathartic making those. The one thing I love still doing, but after the 22nd, I'm kind of like over making, is probably mugs, because there's a lot of steps to them. Like people are like, oh, it's just a mug. Like, why does that take so long? And it's like, yeah, but you throw it, you turn it, you pull a handle, you put the handle on, you clean it all up, you put your stamp on, and then you fire it, and then you sand it, and then you glaze it. Like there's so many steps to that where, it's different. It's all these processes. You have to all factor into everything.
Could you tell us a bit about your studio equipment, pieces that you've acquired over the years? Have you bought them yourself? Have you acquired them through funding? And is there anything else that you're planning on getting studio equipment wise for your new project at Blackheath?
So at the very beginning, when I was in Limavady, it was, I think, 2 Christmases and a birthday present all rolled into one. It was like the only thing I was dreaming of was my own wheel. So it's like a Freema portable little wheel, and it's still going strong. I've never had any issues with it, touch wood. I mean, it's going to die. I've said that now, but anyway. So that was my wheel. Then my kiln, I saved up over uni and Thomastown, I had a kiln fund, and it just all went straight in there. And luckily, by the time I was ready to set up, I had just put enough in there. So got my own kiln then. And then I also use my mum's kiln, which she's had since she begun. I'm one of these people who I'm my own enemy. Like I find forms and that side, I find them very hard to do. I'm not one of those people. I can't concentrate. There's too many boxes. I'm like, what do I put in all these boxes? I would love someone to sit beside me as I fill these out. Would be really good help. But So yeah, I've never got funding for anything. I did look into the Rural Development Fund for the cafe and the pottery. Yeah, there was so many, I mean, rightly so, there were so many hoops and things to jump through and quotes, and our project was so much bigger than it just wasn't feasible. And the time restraints on that, it all had to be in before a certain deadline. And I was still, having quantity surveys done, and, it just wasn't right time. But that was the only thing I've really looked into. I'm going to go for it and research more and try and get a business plan developed. And yeah, I'm going to definitely explore that side a bit more if I can. Yeah.
Could you talk us through your studio? You've got your kilns and you've got your pottery wheel. Are you looking so that you can do workshops? What kind of workshops? Is it wheel based, or will it be hand building?
So when I was teaching it with Caro, it was all hand building. It was lovely because people could really get it. Like, it was, you just wrap a slab around a circle, there's your kind of basic mug, and we had lots of fun decorating. So I've learned from that. I definitely want a hand building aspect, but I've planned for another 4 wheels that are kind of going to slide under the central table. So I have still space to work. So in total 5 wheels, so I can take small groups for throwing lessons. And then the other thing that is my dream when we get there is a pug mill. Like, reclaiming is taking over my life. So a pug mill to mix all the reclaimed clay and just to make it lovely to throw with, which I would love. But yeah, I'm always keeping my ear out for some secondhand equipment. So if anybody has a pug mill they don't want, just send one my way and I'll pay for it. No problem. Thank you very much.
But it is like hen's teeth sometimes. There's certain pieces of equipment that just go like that, They
do. Oh my, they're so quick. Like, there was a few years ago, I was doing the Potter's Market down in Galway. It's lovely, but it is outside. Like, it's in the Spanish Arch. So, like, you're right on the sea as it comes into Galway. And I was there, I think it was a pug mill. I was still looking for it. Like, it went back that long. And I was, like, talking to people, and I was like, does anyone know of a secondhand pug mill? And there was one person, and they were like, I think I might know somewhere. And anyway, it turned out not to be at all feasible, but I was just like chasing this dream of this pug mill. Because I was like, do you remember me? I was talking to you in Galway, messaging this person. But yeah, it didn't happen. It wasn't meant to be.
So what do you do to unwind then?
My actual favourite place in the whole wide world is Benone Beach, which, like, cross country from here is 20-minute drive, which is really nothing for the middle of nowhere. And apart from once lockdown was eased, and then every morning I would be driving and I'm like, where are all these people coming from? Because, like, 9 times out of 10 it's deserted. There's like a horizontal ice cold wind, but you just put your hat on, and Harry, my little dog, and I just go for a big walk, listen to podcasts and really good music. And I just love it. I think it's the best place in the world. No, I've said that. Now everyone's going to go there. No, I'm joking.
But you can see that in your work as well, that landscape, those blues, and then the greens of being in the country. You can kind of see that feeding into your work, though. So would you say that that's a good place for you to go to shut off? Or are you going there specifically to kind of gain something, like some kind of energy or some inspiration?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. It's just part of my routine now. I don't, sometimes I'll get there and I'm like, oh, I'm at the beach. Like, I just don't, it's so automatic. When I was about 16, I was quite unwell. I had like a autoimmune virus. So for about a year, I managed to keep going to tech, but they were very good. They sort of let me work at home and, do an hour here, an hour there. And literally, the only place I would go would be sit in the car and open the windows with either my sister or mum would drive me there and just let the sea air in. And it was just like this little bit of calm. And I just remember, like, okay, we'll do this tomorrow. And then about a year and a half later, I was getting better and it was really good. And then ever since then, it's just somewhere I just always go. I just love the beach.
How much of a good boy is Harry in terms of being a studio dog? Because I have a dog. Cooper, and
And he
he
doesn't
is
like
yeah,
it.
he is a good boy, but he eats clay. Like,
Oh no.
no. Whenever he was a puppy, I used to bring him to Scarva, drive down to Banbridge with him in my passenger seat. You know, I used to
Yeah.
curl up because he used to be quite small. He was a wee puppy. Used to clip him in the seatbelt, set him on the chair, and he would have fallen asleep. Put the heated seat on, you know, because I'm not cruel. Went in and got the clay. I used to bring him in as well, and he used to get so excited to see his big floppy ears, and he was really cute. And then he got too big to bring and too big to sit in the passenger seat. Like, he's really, really long, and he would have sat beside me, and he would have been like the same height as me in the car. So, and I was driving like a little smart car, like a for two, and so it just looked so rare, me driving, and then this big, massive basset hound beside me. He was like taking it all in and drooling and but yeah, as a puppy he would have ate the clay. He loves porcelain. I think that's his favorite to eat, the best flavor. But
expensive.
yeah, my friend Danielle, she used to work in porcelain, and we always used to say that porcelain is like the butter of the clay world, you know, because like you can get margarine or you can get spreads and stuff, and it's not quite as good, but porcelain is butter, you know. Yeah, and then now, because I started making the terracotta, he now eats terracotta, and it's like, I
wonder what he thinks it is.
has developed.
Yeah. It's more earthy now, you know.
Yeah.
He really craves it. So I wanted to know, how good is Harry for you being your studio dog?
So at the very beginning, so Harry was a stray when we lived down, when I was in Thomastown. A very good friend of my mum's lives on a farm near Carlow, and we would go there every Sunday for a coffee. Elsie, she's proper Irish mammy. You wouldn't go home hungry. I mean, it was eat more cake. And I was like, okay, no problem. So, and then she's very near the motorway, and she gets a lot of like pet dogs turn up at her farm. Like, people just throw them away, and I was like, oh my god,
no.
I would just keep them all. I'm just so soft. Like, I couldn't cope. So there was one afternoon we were there having coffee, and Harry, which she called Scruff, that wee Scruff dog has turned up again. And he was terrified. Like, he was this tiny little furry, scruffy terrier. And I just fell in love. And we were living in a rented house. We were both in full-time education employment. And I was like, we cannot get a dog. That is not fair to the poor dog, you know, anyway. So a week of me going, we need to get the dog. Thomas going, we're not getting the dog. And then I'm like, okay, we'll not get the dog. And then he was like, we'll go get the dog. So we did. And then I just went and picked him up and took him home, and just had that moment of like, I have a dog now. What do I do with this little thing? And then maybe a week later, he settled in, like was terrified. Like, the furry thing has obviously had some trauma. So then about a week later, Gus, who runs the pottery skills course, was having trouble with the next door neighbor's chickens. We're coming in and destroying all the garden and the plants that he has made. And he was like, you have a dog, don't you? And I was like, yeah, I have Harry. Did you hear? You know, because I've been talking about this dog forever. And he was like, would he scare off chickens? And I was like, well, I can try. I mean, I think he will. So I brought Harry in, and within 2 minutes, there was feathers everywhere, chickens away. And Harry sat at the back door like, hi, I'm here. So from then on, I used to take him every day to the mill, which is where the pottery course is based. And I had a little bed beside my wheel, and he was the honorary 13th member. And it was so good. He was really good. There was a few troubles he had was with workmen. You know, he would wear like work clothes and boots. I guess, had a bad experience at one point. Like, he would go for the ankles of a few people, and after a while I was like, oh my god, I'm really sorry. Was not harming, never broke any skin. Like, he was all right. But so there was obviously a few little things that I really had to watch. But yeah, everyone really fell in love with him. And then, because he was getting more confident and more himself, like, he had like little quirks, and he used to love sitting and watching the river, like, in his own little world. And then when we got the house in Carnew, it was strict no pets. This is our dream house. We have, like, what can we do? So I was talking over a tea break in the mill. I was like, this house is like, we have to move there. There's nowhere else I can, and like finding rental property at the time in the south was a nightmare. Like you just couldn't get anywhere to live. So I asked Gus, would he mind writing just a letter saying he knows Harry and he's well behaved? Like I was like, that's literally, could you just please write that for me and I can send that on to the landlady? And he wrote this really lovely letter about Harry's duties in the pottery and his work ethic isn't quite up to scratch. Like it was just, it was so
my
cute.
gosh.
And we were allowed to live there. She was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. It's just a small dog. I was like, after all this going down this route. So the one thing he does love is sponges. If there's a sponge, like he shreds them. Like there's a bit of yellow sponges everywhere. I don't know what he does to them, but yeah. But he's he's very good. He's quite a quiet, natured guy. So
just offended by sponges.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's good to hear, because Cooper, no, he doesn't quite get it. He's a really terrible studio assistant because, he'll come in, I leave the door open, so it's at the end of the garden, he'll come in and I'm sitting like on my stool or something, and he'll put his head under my arm while I'm doing something and he'll mess it up. He just wants attention all the time. And he loves it when the kilns are on because you could set him on fire and he still wouldn't be hot enough. He needs heat. He really does. I mean, we haven't set him on fire, but he's had so much clay, he would just turn to ceramic. So
please don't call RSPCA. Gemma is
a
very good dog mom.
No, I'm going to edit this out.
Cat in a dog, like cats are very loving things.
I think that's it. Yeah, well, he's a scent hound, and I think he can smell heat because, like, it's uncanny the way he knows where there's something where it's warm. Like if I like have a hot water bottle, or like if I have maybe just got up from sitting on the sofa or whatever, or someone's got out of bed, he is like there before you can blink. It's mad. So, and like he's it's not like he's close, he just appears and then he's like there. It's like Jesus. He is a good boy. I really made him out to be, like I hate him, but he's very good. Yeah.
I have a lurcher called Indium, and he is a rescue. He's relatively new. We've had him for just over a year, and as a studio dog, privately, he's great, but he loves handbags, and I am not a handbag person, so I didn't know this. But I had a workshop full of people in the studio, and people had just left their bags round, and that was grand. And then all of a sudden, I just, your like dog spidey sense goes off, and you're like, he's doing something he's not meant to. He had chewed through one of the participants' handbag and like chewed all of the stuff inside her bag, and I was like, I'm so sorry. So both Cooper and Harry sound like absolute dream dogs by comparison. The verdict's still out at the minute.
When I was down with Caro, so she has Lilu, who's a collie, and Grania is a greyhound. Harry's just walking out the door. He's just here to say. And Grania, she's a greyhound, and she has that same thing. So the three dogs, and Cara and I would walk every lunchtime around the park, and because she's so tall and this big long nose that sort of wiggles independently of the rest of her head, and then you'd be stood at the traffic light and she would just have her whole head in someone's bag, and you're just like, oh, I'm really sorry. she has like these, and she's so calm and regal the way she walks, but you see if she gets something that like an ice cream off a kid or something, she'll just run away with it, like, oh, I'm so good, look what I've done.
Must be a greyhound thing then. That's good to know. That's reassuring.
But they're adorable. There's something so funny about long-nosed dogs. I just love them.
But yeah, and I love, they seem to have really nice clothes. Like they seem to be like the model of like the dog world or something. They're always very well dressed.
These lovely polar necks, and it's like, wow, I'd love one of those.
I'd love to be able to pull it off as well as they do, though.
Yeah, same.
What is the last piece of locally made craft that you have bought or invested in, or who's been the last independent retailer that you've supported?
So I got married last summer in August.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Feels all very weird being a wife and my husband. I'm introducing him as a husband and I'm like, that's weird. But for our wedding, so all the bridesmaids' dresses were all like pastel colours because my two sisters live in Australia and Tom's sister and sister-in-law, one lives in Australia, one lives in England. So I was like, just sort your own dresses and, talk amongst yourself, whatever, I'm glad. So then for all the ties of the groomsmen, I got Marion in number 6 to make all Liberty ties. And they were really lovely, but all different coloured shade pastels to match the bridesmaid dresses. So that is definitely the last thing I made. And Thomas wears his all the time because I was like, I don't want to buy and invest in something that you're going to just wear for one day. I mean, there's no fun in that. So at least these are like really quirky ties for all the guys. So that was really good. Yeah, it was lovely. I might go back to her and see if she would like make me, I don't know, like a mask or something, because there's really lovely patterns. She's gonna hate me now because I've said this on here. She's like, I'm not making them.
What's your favorite book, or what's the last thing you read?
Yeah, so I'm very into Audible with working in the pottery. It's kind of an addiction. And then with the whole movement that's happening around the world and Black Lives Matter, and I just felt I'm not educated enough in this topic. So I really invested in reading and researching. And the one book I honestly think everybody in the world should read is, well, 2. Okay, I'll say 2. I couldn't decide between them. Is I'm Not Your Baby Mother by Candice Braithwaite. So good. Oh my word. And even follow her on Instagram because she's really cool. And she's took up rollerblading. And I'm like, I really want to do rollerblading now. But it's a very good book. And then the other one is Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Rennie Edo-Lodge. Another brilliant book. So definitely for a bit of education. But just to open your eyes and just take it in. It's shocking. But I think we can join the revolution. I think we can do it.
100% agree. Those are brilliant recommendations. Very, very good. Well, it's been absolutely amazing to speak with you today and to see you again for the second time in my life.
Hopefully not the last. I'm sure we'll all have another big party together.
Yes, I'm right up for that. And as soon as you get the Blackheath Pottery up, you won't be able to get rid of me. I will be there every day.
Well, you could come in the pottery and make some stuff if you want.
God, I will watch. If people want to get in touch with you or follow your making journey, where can they go?
So I am the Blackheath Pottery across all the usual social medias. I have started a YouTube, which is a bit of a learning curve. But yeah, it's getting easier. The whole filming and editing bit took a bit of work, but we're getting there. And then my personal crystal shiny objects Instagram is Babs Belshaw Ceramics. So you can find me on either of those platforms.
And I think Harry has his own Instagram as well, doesn't he?
He does. Harry the Potter Dog, if you want to, get your daily beach scene in. He's all about that.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been really good. I've loved it.
Thank you so much, Babs, for an incredible episode. We love speaking with you. And also thanks to the Arts Council of Northern Ireland, who have kindly supported this second series with funding from the Artist Emergency Programme. For our next episode, we are speaking with jewellery artist Anne Earls Boylan, so don't miss it on Thursday the 27th of August 2020.